الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue the explanation of this tremendous treatise entitled Buloogh al-Maraam, obtaining the objective by the great Imam Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Ali ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, the one who died 852 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. You'll find the time now is 4:25 p.m. Saturday, May the 27th, 2023. It agrees on the Islamic calendar, it is the 6th of Dhul Qa'dah, where the year is 1444 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. As we continue in the continue in the chapter, as we started in the hadith of the great Sahabi al-Jaleel, al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, that he put in this chapter, the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. As we were explaining this hadith, when the Prophet ﷺ had advised the shabab, the youth, that he said, Ya ma'ashar al-shabab, man istata'a minkum al-ba'a, falyatazawwaj, فإنه أغض للبصر وأحسن للفرج وأحسن للفرج ومن لم يستطع فعليه بالصوم فإنه له وجاء. We talked about, oh group of the youth, who's ever from amongst you is al-ba'a, who has the al-ba'a. We talked about the word al-ba'a and what it means, and we will review it again. The meaning of the word al-ba'a. He says, for those who have this ba'a, as we'll explain inshallah again, then let him get married. For verily it will be a means to lower the gaze. It will be a protection for the private part. Whoever is not able to do that, then upon him is fasting. For verily in it will be a shield. Protect, pray right here, Shaykh. Move forward. Closer to the wall. Get closer to the sutra. So you'll find a little bit more to this way. No, this way.
This way?
No, the opposite way.
Oh, this way.
Exactly. On that angle, right? Yeah, that's perfect. So he said, verily it will be for him a shield. We talked about how the affairs pertaining to the responsibility of affairs is connected with marriage. We talked about how this matter is connected with the affair linguistically and the meaning what comes in the Kitab and Sunnah, as we talked about. So we'll revise again. You'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in so many ayat for the encouragement of human beings, of course, for mankind to get married. And that marriage is the means in order to what? Build communities, and to build families, and to make things easy upon one another, where those affairs within the communities will allow them to be strengthened by the different types of people who are able to help one another. Where they grow their families, and they inaugurate them, of course. And you'll find, like we said, it makes the affairs easy upon one another when there's more people involved in helping, and when they're working together. However, the structure of the family has to be built upon what Allah has what? Ordained. And He ordained the marriage contract to be made. And this is what we spoke about yesterday. You'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Surah An-Nisa, that He says, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. He said, of course, marry what is good for you, of what you have deemed to be what? Good and appropriate of those women. Would be 2, 3, and 4. We'll talk about that when the time comes. Also the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنْكِحُوا الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّالِحِينَ مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ وَإِمَائِكُمْ إِنْ يَكُونُوا فُقَرَاءَ يُغْنِيهِمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. We talked about the ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, marry those who are ayama minkum, meaning those who are liberated, and those who have the ability, and the righteous from amongst your servants, and your concubines. He says that if they are poor, Allah will enrich them from His bounty. But these are just examples to let one know of the affair of marriage and how the affair is what? Highly recommended. But as we mentioned last class, it can be obligatory in certain instances. So we'll talk about that in this class that's coming, inshallah. But the Prophet ﷺ in his hadith, if you notice everyone, the Prophet ﷺ was taking consideration the shabab. And we talked about the word shab in the Arabic language and what it necessitates. How the word shab is one that start from the age of adolescence until they reach what? Either what? As we mentioned last class, some of them say 30 and some of them say 40. You'll find that Ahl Ilm, based upon the hadith, al-Bukhari, of which you'll find of the people in paradise, how their age, or their range, they will be shabab. That those people will be in paradise in that age limit, meaning they won't be too old, nor will they be too young. They'll be right in the middle, forever. So you'll find that the word shab, that stage or that time frame within one's youth, what is the strongest opinion is that it ends at the time of 40. Arba'in. The age of the word shab, meaning being youth or youthful, that affair stops at 40. Then the decline, or what you call kuhula, starts after that age. But the Prophet ﷺ advised that those that are in this stage or this period or this time frame within their lives to utilize it, of course, in what is pleasing to Allah, but not to utilize it in a manner that angers Allah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove the barakah from it. He will remove the blessing from it. And the affair of what was pertaining to prominence and success all starts with the foundation of an act that pleases Allah first. So is this the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like we said, was taking consideration that the shab or the shabab, the youth, will be tested within their desires, and that these affairs are all from the nature of the human being. That the human being at a certain age will start developing desires. And it's not something that's condemned or looked down upon. Rather, this is something that's considered from the nature of the human being, that they will get desires. However, what is taken into consideration is that they utilize these desires in a manner that is pleasing to Allah, not in a manner that angers Allah and is pleasing to the devil or the shaitan. So the message of Allah that He said, مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ مِنْكُمُ الْبَاءَ فَلْيَتَزَوَّجْ. So the word al-ba'a, as we explained last class, the meaning of the word al-ba'a is kulaf al-zawaj. He said it's kulaf al-zawaj. That whoever is from amongst you is able to have that monetary ability. We said the monetary ability, kulaf al-zawaj. Kulaf al-zawaj meaning the monetary ability. And also, in addition to that is al-wat, meaning those who also have the physical ability. The physical ability. Meaning the man or the woman, of course, that has those desires to carry that affair out. We said that last class, from the meanings of the word nikah is intimacy itself. Intimacy itself is considered from the meanings of the word al-nikah. وَالْمُرَادْ هُنَا الْمَعْنَى الْأَوَّلِ. However, the meaning of the word al-ba'a here is kulaf al-zawaj, meaning the monetary ability to what? To get married. We talked about the details of this matter in regards to some of our youth that do not have the ability, especially from those who are teenagers, as we say, in the stage of the time frame of 16 to 17 to 18, as we know that we are in a detrimental state. We're in a very detrimental state where a lot of the youth don't have the monetary capability, but they might have the physical, meaning the desires are there. And we talked about this issue that we know that al-mafasid muqaddamun ala jalb al-masalih, that to remove the evils or the harms takes precedence over attaining the benefits of what things or affairs are supposed to be. What do we mean by that? You'll find that the youth that around the age of 16 or 17 or 18 or 19, and even in their early 20s, especially here in this land, a lot of them monetarily do not have the ability. But we know that they are surrounded by all types of temptation. They are tempted to do this, especially due to the fact that we live in a very promiscuous society. Very promiscuous society where it's oversaturated with sexual stimulation in all aspects. Whether it be in the computers, whether it be on the internet, whether it be in our environment that we live in the streets. We see women dressing promiscuously. It's on the internet where affairs of temptation are constantly being shown, and we are constantly being bombarded with all these different types of elements that we are being tested with on a daily basis. As a result of that, we talked about how the youth are being tested in this regard. They're exposed to all this different type, like we said, of oversaturation, of sexual stimulation, temptation, and all the windows of it are open. Due to the fact that we've been tested with these type of atrocities of today, what do we do in regards to catering to our youth in this regard? And we gave some solutions. We said, for example, that the affairs of some of our parents, that we come together with both parties, meaning from the young child or the male that wants to embark upon marriage and the female, that the parents come together and they say, for example, let us allow them to marry each other. And then after they marry each other, then they go out and start slow in a manner where they get to know each other, and then they see if they can accommodate one another, if they're compatible. Because we know some of the youth, they get to know each other, and they find that they're totally as they say, apples and oranges, or they're totally odds and ends, or they're just totally incompatible for one another. In that case, like we said, it's better for them to get married than them to fornicate with one another. Because if you do not marry them off, these people will fornicate. We live in times fornication is easy now. Fornication and adultery is something that's considered small, to the point where you would think that the people deem it to be a minor sin now, where it's considered from the kaba'ir, it's considered from the major sins. But how do we accommodate the youth in this regard? We talked about this yesterday. We said the parents do not try to overburden, especially your son, even though at the same time we have to teach them responsibility. And that eventually the affair will become, son, that you have to reach the stage where you have to know that you are fully responsible for taking care of your family. And that you're a man and this is what Allah has ordained. That you are the person as the sole provider of your family. That's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to instill in our youth as far as the males. So that the males will be able to maintain their duties as a man of taking care of their household. That's the ultimate goal. But in their youth, such as the teens of 17 or 18, in that type of stage, you'll find that a lot of them do not have the financial capability, even though, like we said, the physical ability is there. So we try to accommodate them in that regard by the parents coming together and saying, okay, my son will marry your daughter, and they'll get married, and then after that they can get to know one another after the marriage. Because if you don't, they're going to do it in a haram way. They're going to date, and they're going to end up falling into certain things that are displeasing to Allah, and it's considered something detrimental to the family structure. Because nobody wants their children building a family off of fornication. That's something humiliating to any family that's trying to practice Islam correctly. It's very humiliating that a family and that children be involved as far as the zina. Due to that reason, you want to put forth the best effort in trying to accommodating a manner in which you'll find of protecting the chastity of the children, whereas we said coming with the suggestions that will be a reason in aiding them and maintaining their chastity so they can fulfill their rights with their Lord, but at the same time be able to fulfill their desires in a manner that's pleasing to Allah also. So that's what we said, some of the suggestions. Some of the suggestions of how we gave in order to now save our children and our youth from falling into these great sins. Because the affair, like we said, is extremely dangerous these days, especially in these times that are very trying for all parents. All the parents see the children, like we said, the internet and the fitna of it is now entering all of our homes. Everywhere you go, every country is being tested with the same fitna of the internet and social media and the likes. And as a result, a lot of our youth are falling into temptation, or they're being very tempted to embark upon affairs that anger Allah. And like we said, from them is fornication and premarital involvement with someone in premarital sex or in premarital intimacy. All those matters are, as a result, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger descends upon the creation if the people, like we said, partake in it, and to the point where people are becoming very lax with it. And these matters, like we said, are very dangerous. So like we said, everyone, the Prophet ﷺ, in this particular hadith, the message of Allah is as if he is teaching, rather he is teaching the youth that said, in this time of your life, it's going to be fitna, where your desires is at its peak. And if you're able to have that ability, get married. And we'll also talk about the ayat and also the authentic sunnah that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, from the three people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be in his aid, meaning Allah will aid them. And from them is an-nakih, the one who seeks marriage. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be in their what? In their aid. As long as they maintain themselves and they seek what is pleasing to Allah, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring that relief and facilitate for them that affair. And we'll talk about that more as it comes, inshallah. However, the Prophet ﷺ said, مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ مِنْكُمُ الْبَاءَ فَلْيَتَزَوَّجْ. So it's a command. It's as if it's a command in this context. Look to the word. It says, فَلْيَتَزَوَّجْ. Let him get married. So a person might extract from this wording in this hadith here that it's an obligation to get married. However, what we want to do is explain that the affairs of marriage falls under those ahkam, those 5 ahkam that we're what? Accustomed to knowing, such as the affair being obligatory. So, marriage can be obligatory. It can be wajib. And it can be highly recommended. And it can be disliked. And it can be haram. All those khamsatu ahkam, those 5 rulings that we know of, all of them are based upon the circumstance of the individual. For certain people, marriage is obligatory. For certain people, marriage is highly recommended. And for certain people, marriage is disliked. And we'll talk about that and give examples of it. And for certain people, marriage can be haram. And those examples we'll talk about in a minute. Like, the first category, number 1, where you'll find of the affairs pertaining to nikah being obligatory, you'll find that the great Imam Ibn Fawzan, he says this. He said, لِمَنْ يَخَافُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ مِنَ الْعَنَةِ فَمَنْ يَخَافُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ مِنَ الْفِتْنَةِ فَإِنَّهُ يَجِبُ عَلَيْهِ يَتَزَوَّجْ. So that's number 1. That he said, whoever has fear for themselves, al-anat. The word al-anat in the Arabic language is like great difficulty, that great stress, meaning that the person is finding it very difficult to maintain their chastity and maintain a pleasing state to Allah until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates for them that affair. We'll also talk about, is it correct for the fathers to say, I want my daughters to complete their education before they get married? As I've heard that some of the parents or the awliya from those who are responsible for their children say this, that I rather want my son or my daughter to complete their education before they get married. That's something that we'll also have to speak about, this detail, because this is very important. And you'll find that the ulama warn against this, especially if you see in your child the great desire to get married and you're preventing them from that. Because what is something that also us as parents will be responsible for is making sure that we enable our children to embark upon and make available for them as much as possible what is halal, what is what? Lawful. And not making that affair difficult until they will want to be inclined towards haram. And you'll find that the parents do the opposite. They'll make the haram, what is unlawful and displeasing to Allah, easy. And they'll make the affair, what is lawful, very difficult. For example, you'll say, okay, you can have a boyfriend or you can have a girlfriend. The most important thing to me is that you complete your education. That's incorrect. The affair is incorrect, where the person has now mixed up their priorities. If you're able, gather between both. Say, listen, while you're in school, we'll let you get married, but let's make the stipulations, of course, with the husband and the wife. You ask the young one who's embarking upon marriage, listen, my daughter, I want her to get married because I want her to protect her chastity. I don't want her to fall into anything haram with anyone. So I want her to get married. And I know that's a priority because I will be responsible on the day of resurrection of being asked whether or not I enabled my daughter to protect and maintain her chastity, and I was able to what? Aid her in that. So whether it doesn't make a difference, if I made it difficult, I'll be responsible. If I made it lawful, of course, and made it easy as much as I can, I'll be rewarded. So I'm enabling my daughter to marry. So you say to for example, to now the young one or to the parents who you're dressing, you say to them, I want them to get married, but if I'm able to allow her education to be complete. Due to the fact that we live in times here in this world where a lot of the marriages that we do not want to now take a risk that now if the divorce comes, she doesn't have anything. Because the affairs are detrimental on both sides, whether they be the men and the women. Some of the women, of course, once the children are involved and they get divorced, it becomes harder for them to get married after they get divorced. Men, they can keep getting married as much as they want, a lot of them. So it's harder on them in that aspect of them. Men can continue. Women, it's different. Because a lot of men these days, some of them do not want to marry women that already have children by another man. They don't want to do it. They don't want the responsibility, and some of them say, I don't want the headache in dealing with another man's kids, as far as the father being involved and all the other fitna that he might bring. So you'll find, the point I'm trying to make is, brothers and sisters that are listening, the affairs in regards to women, they have it hard just like the men have it hard. Like we said, the women now, once kids are involved, and the affairs is connected with that, and they get divorced, they have to go back home if they don't have any type of education. So they have to go back to their fathers. What about the women who do not have their fathers? Who have a background where they were non-Muslim and their father isn't around. So what do? They don't have the option to go home after their divorce. They don't have those choices. So what are they supposed to do? So now they're stuck. So that's the reason why you'll find that in these days, we're trying to take a moderate approach as much as possible. We're not trying to go to the extreme where we say, listen, I want my daughter in college. I don't even care if she fornicates. And she had 10 different sexual partners by 10 different men. As long as she finishes her education, I'm fine with that. That's extreme. And to the point where it's as if you care more about her dunya than her hereafter. That's basically what you're saying. You're saying her soul, in the state of her soul, I'm not really concerned about that. All I'm concerned about is her well-being in this dunya. That's basically what you're saying, but you're saying it in different words. Her dunya is preserved, but her hereafter might be what? Messed up. So, we don't go too far in that extreme. Then we don't want to go to the extreme by saying, for example, okay, I want her to get married, immediately start having children as soon as she get married, and she has no education. So you just went from one extreme to another extreme. And like we said, our religion is a religion that's moderate. A moderate approach, and we try to accommodate both affairs. We gather between well-being of the dunya and as well as well-being of what? Of the hereafter. We gather between both affairs to make it what? With a moderate approach so everybody's accommodated. So if she does get divorced, she has something to fall back on, where she's not left now with nothing. and she'll be left for public assistance from the non-Muslim government to now plunge herself in another pearl of problems. These are affairs that we're taking consideration. That's the reason why, like we said, we have to gather between both matters, and like we said, bring the moderate approach. So make sure that everybody is protected as much as possible and both parties are accommodated. So, you embark upon the affair of what? Of education. Of course, in regards to our daughters, you come to the spouse that wants to get married. And say to them, listen, my daughter, out of protection for her, just because in case that for some odd reason something happens to you. Because take in consideration that the husband might die. What is the woman going to do now? We have to have answers to these questions. He might get injured while he's on his job. He might get injured. He can't work anymore. Some countries don't have workers' compensation. He stops working, that's it. Doesn't have any workers' comp, as they say. What is she supposed to do now? She has 6 kids, 7 kids. My husband got injured on his job. He can't work. What's she supposed to do now? Third thing you have to take in consideration. The wife also, let's just say it didn't work out. Now we have 2, 3 children. The worst relationship didn't work out. Now she has 3 kids, 4 kids to take care of while she's now divorced with no parents or any family structure to fall back on. What is she supposed to do? That's what we're saying, everyone. That's the reason why we're trying to take a moderate approach to this matter. Take a moderate approach. We're not going to go to the one extreme, as we said, nor are we going to go to the other extreme. We try to take a middle course. Listen, my daughter wants to complete her education just to protect herself, just for some case that something happens. Whether you might die, whether you might get injured in your job, or you might divorce her, because all those are probabilities. They're there. You might divorce her. You might get married to my daughter, might not like her. For some odd reason, you just don't mesh. And that happens every day here in Philadelphia. I've heard so many stories of so many problems. Some brother married a sister. For some odd reason, 3 months, 4 months later, they find that they're incompatible. That's the reason why you'll find, like we said, in regards to pregnancy, that's something that we'll also address. You'll find that they're incompatible. Now, this is what I don't agree with, and I'm being frank with this. Don't get these sisters and these brothers, don't get each other pregnant on the first night. Here in this land, you don't know who you're marrying. Now, if we was in a Muslim country, it's something different. You're in a Muslim country, you kind of know what you're getting. Here, what's the situation here in America, everyone? They go into the masjid to get married to a wakil that he doesn't know these sisters, nor does he know these brothers technically. Does he know them? Does he know these women? He's a wakil in the masjid in charge of 200 different women. Does he know them? You don't know what you're getting. That's the reality here. I'm not talking about other countries. I'm talking about what's going on here. What's going on here in America is that women are getting married to wakils at masajid they don't know them. You don't know what you're getting. And with vice versa, women with these brothers, you don't know what you're getting. So why is it now you get married, the first night you're going to get pregnant by a man you don't know? Does it make any sense? First week, you don't know the man. Y'all don't know if you're compatible mentally. Nothing. You don't know nothing. First week you get married. You find out, the first week you get married, you'll find out, listen, we don't get along. And then you find out, now you go to the hospital, I'm pregnant by this man. Then it builds the layers of problems. And then likewise for the men. The men get married. After a week or two, we find out, me and this woman is really not compatible. Now I got a baby by her. Or you'll find that after a week or two that this man has some issues, some major issues. And then the men will say the same thing. I found out this woman has some major issues. Now she's a mother of my child. These are the affairs, like we said, we need to take in consideration. They're very important. Because like we said, take your time. We live in times, like we said, here, especially in this land, when you get married, you don't know what you're getting. It's a hit or miss. And a lot of the wakils of the masajid, they don't know the intricacies of these people. They don't. You could come to me as a man, come to the masjid, show you the best brother in the community. How you deal with your woman in your household, something totally different. And I've heard these stories before. He seems like a good brother. He comes to the masjid, mashallah. He prays his prayers. He comes to the class. He makes a throw. Looks like he comes with the best appearance. But it does not necessitate that behind closed doors, how he treats his wife is something totally different. Can you stop throwing that? Stop. Okay. So, these are the affairs, like we said, to protect ourselves as the community. Protecting ourselves necessitates certain affairs. That's the reason why I tell our brothers and sisters, get married. Get married. Get married and then take your time. Get married and take your time. Don't rush into the babies. Don't rush in, and if you're able, don't rush into jumping into having sex either. Take your time. Why? Because it saves yourself. Because you might, like we said, you don't know what you're getting when you get married here. You don't know what you get usually. And like we said, you'll find you get married, you'll find after a week or two, maybe after a month, that both of you are apples and oranges. We incompatible. Me and you are not compatible. You don't like me, I'm like, our mindset just doesn't mesh. But now once you get her pregnant the first week, it becomes a layer of problems. And I've been saying this over and over again, and people still do it. I've heard brothers say this, I got her pregnant the first night. The first night of marriage? You don't even know her. Yeah, but she looked good. Okay. Oh, okay. The brothers at the masjid, for the wakil, the masjid, the wakil doesn't know her. He knows babes to a certain extent. He knows her. But he doesn't know the intricacies. The intricacies are the families. That's the reason why when you go over a Muslim country, you kind of know what you're getting. When you see the mother, you see the father, you see the aunts, you see the brothers, you see the sisters. So you got a mind frame of kind of like what I'm getting myself into here. I have a little bit more of insight. But America, you don't know, whether it be from the male or from the female aspect. You don't know what you're getting. Take your time. And then you might come to the conclusion where your mindset or your mind frames do not mesh, and then we can just leave in kindness and amicably. And that's a whole other topic that I'll talk about. Why is it that every time people got to separate, somebody had to be violated or victimized? Why? Where do we get that from? The two people just don't get along. It doesn't have to mean that anybody's a bad person, whether it be the male or the female. That's another topic for another day. But that is something that I wanted to take in consideration with our brothers out there. Like I said, brothers have a problem with admitting when their daughters or their sons become grown. Once they are in their teens, by the Islamic shara, they're grown. They're not little kids anymore. And I've even seen adults treat their grown kids like they're little kids. They'll be grown adults, 18, 20, 21. My son is, he's a little boy. Heck, he's not a little boy. He's a grown man. It's over. Oh, my little girl. Your little girl's 18. She's grown. She's 16. She's grown. 20. She's grown. My little girl. She's fine. She's 23 years old. My little girl. She's not a little girl. She's an adult. She's grown. It's over. You have to start treating them as such so they can be more responsible. These are what we're speaking about today. When you see the affair becomes where they are being plagued by their desires. Here in this instance, it's obligatory for us as fathers to marry our daughters off. Marry them off. Because if you don't marry your daughter off, she will find a way to fornicate. I'm being frank with you. I'm being straight up with you. They will find a way to a boy. They will. And the women listening online know exactly what I'm talking about. They will find a way. If you don't enable them and facilitate for their marriage, they will end up fornicating. How you avoid that? Sit with them, talk with them respectfully. Don't raise your voice. This is what I would prefer for you. I prefer for you someone that's a little bit more mature. But if it's a fitna on you, and I'd rather just marry you off to one who's a little bit younger, if that's what you want, in order to preserve your chastity. And if it didn't work out, and they got divorced, mashallah. But at least at the end of the day, you could say she had a marriage. It's better for her to get married and get divorced than her fornicating. Like you said, we have to wake up and start thinking these affairs are major. People out here fornicating, this stuff is major. These are major sins. These are kaba'ir. They're called kaba'ir. You know what the word kaba'ir means? Major sins. And it's like easy these days. So the first category, brothers and sisters, is what? That marriage is what? An obligation. When you see that it's a fitna upon someone, the affair becomes obligatory. They have to get married. So that's what we said, that marriage can be obligatory. It can be obligatory. A person would say marriage being obligatory in case that the affair becomes where the person is facing what they call anat, great difficulty in protecting themselves from falling into something. If you find that your desires has reached its peak, meaning it's reached the point where you find that the shaitan is making you extremely weak, where you start to look at affairs that's impermissible, or you start to look at certain websites or certain pictures or videos, and you find that yourself is constantly looking at these matters, in this instance, you have to get married to protect yourself. Like we said, just looking around at women and women looking around at men and all these other matters, brothers and sisters, these affairs are displeasing to Allah. It's not something small, it's something that's something major. Keep that in mind. So that's what we're saying in this regard. That's the first hukum. That marriage is what? Obligatory. Then you have the second hukum. The person might say, how is marriage unlawful? Marriage unlawful is in a state, for example, of who you marry. So that's the second category, meaning who you marry. For example, you can't marry a woman that's already married. مثل تزوج المعتدة, a woman that's in divorce, so she's now in a state what they call al-iddah. So you can't get married to a woman that's already married. You'll find that he mentions, it says, وَالْعَقْدُ عَلَى ذَوَاتِ الْمَوَانِعِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. He said, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us detail of who we can marry or who we cannot marry. For example, and I think this is some of the affairs you'll find that a lot of the non-Muslims are not aware of. They just think you can just marry as many women as you want. There's no boundary on the number in addition to who you marry, which is not the case. You'll find that, walillahi alhamd, how perfect our religion is, to the point where we have the details of who we can marry and who we can't marry. From the affairs of who we cannot marry, for example, as it comes in the ayah, Surah An-Nur. Was one ayah, Surah An-Nur, and there's another ayah, Surah An-Nisa, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ وَبَنَاتُكُمْ وَأَخَوَاتُكُمْ وَعَمَّاتُكُمْ وَخَالَاتُكُمْ وَبَنَاتُ الْأَخِ وَبَنَاتُ الْأُخْتِ, to the end of the ayah. For example, you'll find that the structure in which we have, of we know who we cannot marry and who we can. Number one, as we mentioned, you cannot marry a woman that's already married. That's number one, as we know. And I think that's self-explanatory. In the ayah, if you look in Surah An-Nisa, ayah number 23, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, it's been made unlawful upon you to marry your mothers, and to marry your daughters, and to marry your sisters, and your maternal aunts and your paternal aunts, and the daughters of your brother, and the daughters of your sisters, and the women or the mothers of yourselves in which gave you that leban or breastfed you, and your sisters from breastfeeding, and the mothers of your wives, and your raba'ib, meaning the rabiba. Your rabiba is like your what? Your stepchild. Your stepchild. It's haram for you to what? Marry her, which has been raised within your what? Within your dwelling places or up your upbringing under yourselves. From your women, meaning your wives, in which you entered their mother, meaning that you was intimate with her mother, meaning your rabiba. Your stepdaughter, once you now have entered or you've been intimate with a mother, it is impermissible for you to marry forever, even if you divorce your wife. That stepdaughter is unlawful forever due to the fact that you were intimate with her mother by marriage. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُونُوا دَخَلْتُمْ بِهِنْ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ. He said, if the marriage take place where you did not enter upon the mother at all, there wasn't any what? Intercourse or any intimacy. He said, for there's no problem. Then you have the halailu abnaikum alladhina min aslabikum. Then we talked about the halail. The halail, which means, like you said, the wives of your sons, who are from your loins. With that, you take in marriage two sisters simultaneously. And that's also going to come in the chapter where they're going to cover. How you can't gather between what? Marrying two sisters simultaneously. What does that mean? Meaning, if you married to a sister, and she has a sister, if one was to what? Pass away and die, then you can marry her sister. If she was to pass away first. But while she's living, it's not permissible. And all these details will come, inshallah, in the chapter. The point of the matter is, everyone, this is the second category. A person was saying, number one, the first hukum, first category is that is what? Obligatory. The second one is where it's haram. Haram to who you marry. You cannot marry your mothers, your daughters, your sisters, your paternal aunt, nor your maternal aunt. And the different examples we just gave, and there's more. All that's going to come, inshallah. So, in that instance, when you marry someone like this, it becomes what? Unlawful. If you make a marriage contract in this instance, the marriage contract is invalid. No matter what you write, and no matter who married you off. It does not matter. If you marry now your mother, which is disgusting, and all those other acts, then that marriage contract is invalid. Even if you went to Center City and wrote up the contract. The contract with Allah is invalid. So who do you care about more? Who do the non-Muslims think, or what your Lord thinks? Or what your Lord, of course, looks at. For those affairs, everyone is what one needs to what? Take in consideration if you have truly submitted to Allah. So that's what we're saying in this regard, which is the second hukum. Fine. Also, on the second category, as we mentioned, it said, the ones who not have the ability, of course, to get marriage and carry out the proper rites for marriage. Where that person intends to harm the woman and just was to utilize her for a sex toy, without in actuality fulfilling the responsibilities of what he's supposed to do in regards to her, that type of marriage is unlawful because your intent is to do something haram. Those type of affairs are what? Impermissible. Is it clear, everyone? But like we said, فالزواج يختلف باختلاف الأحوال فتارة يكون واجبا وتارة يكون مستحبا وتارة يكون مباحا وتارة يكون محرما وتارة يكون مكروها. So, as we just want to sum it up, that the affairs of marriage, all of it is different according to its circumstances, meaning according to that individual. For certain people, it is obligatory. For certain people, it's highly recommended. The person will say it's highly recommended. What do you mean? You have certain people out there that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made their fitna to be with in regards to what? Getting married. Certain people they don't care about it. They don't have no desire. It's like, if I get married, if I do, if I don't, I don't. It's not really a fitna upon me. You have certain people out there that are like that. It's to the point where you have to really kind of push them to get married. For those people you'll find that are able to what? To carry out their daily affairs and their daily tasks, and women are not a fitna on them. Nor is men. Men are not a fitna on them. But you'll find that certain instances that certain men, they have the what? They have the monetary ability. Maybe Allah has given them a lot of wealth, but I don't have no desire. I just want to just live my life and mind my business. And certain things with women too. Certain women are saying, listen, I'm good. I have my financial priorities in check and it's set. I don't really have no need for men. And you'll find that certain women are in this instance. It's to the point, it's as if you got to push them to get a family and to build a family. Here in this instance, you'll find that those type of people, it's highly recommended. It's not an obligation due to the fact it's not a fitna on them. It's not a fitna on them. And due to the fact it's not a fitna on them, it's not obligatory for them to get married. But however, it's It's highly recommended. So that's the example as far as it being mustahab. And then you have the affair with its mubah, with its natural, that is encouraged, but they don't have to, nor is it highly recommended. But if it's something they want to do, they do it. If they don't, they don't. We just gave it examples of whether it's haram. And in certain affairs, like we said, where it's detested or it's disliked. So those are the 5 ahkam in regards to marriage. That sometimes it could be everyone? Obligatory. Sometimes it could be highly recommended. And sometimes it could be mubah. Mubah means something natural. Something natural. If you do it, you do it. You don't, you don't. And in certain instances, it's unlawful. It's haram. And we talked about the examples of that, right, everyone? From marrying your mother, or your spouse, or your paternal aunt, or maternal aunt, and the likes of that. Fine. And in certain instances where it's disliked. A person might say, how is it disliked in certain instances? We'll talk about that next class because we're about to start. We'll stop the class so people can pray. Fine. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu in this last part we'll stop. He said about this hadith, he said, the reason of marriage from this fawaid, فائدة الزواج لهم فإنه أغض للبصر فالإنسان إذا تزوج وأغناه الله بزوجة لا ينظر إلى النساء والنظر إلى النساء محرم والذي يدفع إلى هذا في الغالب هو عدم الزواج. He said from the benefits of marriage that it minimizes and lowers the desire of looking at women to protect himself. That Allah will enrich you if you do it in the proper way and in the blessed way. That Allah will put barakah in your marriage where you put you'll desire your wife, and it will minimize the fitna of constantly looking at other women. For verily looking at numerous women and all the different types there are impermissible. And usually in most cases, what pushes a person to falling to these type of matters is when a man is not married. For verily if a man gets married in a proper way, Allah will put blessing in the marriage and enrich the man where he will It will minimize of where he is able to lower his gaze. And looking at women that are not lawful for them. Or lawful for him, excuse me. He said, for verily, it would be a form of protection. So he can protect himself and, like we said, vice versa. The woman will be able to look at her husband and be sufficed by that By that man that is pleasing to her. Meaning Allah will bless the marriage. And that's from his blessing. That Allah will put barakah in it, where Allah will make your wife beautiful in your eyes, inshallah. By taking the proper steps to get married. You take the proper steps, you'll find that as we mentioned, that Allah will put barakah in it. It will be a means for you to protect yourself. And allow one to minimize the fitna of looking at anything that walks and anything that looks so-called appealing to our eyes, even though, like we said, it's satanic. Because we know that those women that are walking around enticing are cursed. Yes, they are. A lot of people have to know that. We'll talk about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in regards to that. The women are walking around enticing the men are cursed. Yes, they are. They're cursed by Allah. Why? Because it's a temptation of the fitna for the men. That they have to constantly be tested by looking at nonsense like that. And sometimes it gets irritating. It's like, come on, man. I'm having a good day. Come on. I ain't even thinking about it. Here we go. You understand? See your brothers in here agreeing with me. It's like, man, you're not even thinking about women. You go out, it's like, man, God. It's so bad, it's even to the point where it's even in the Muslim apps. Just the other day, I was just looking at my phone, look on the Muslim app for the adhan. A woman with some type of tight clothes is on a Muslim adhan pro app. Really? On the adhan pro app, really? I even have to be sexually stimulated by looking at I'm trying to practice my religion. That's how bad it is out here. There you go. Super tight overgarments also. Brothers, that's the reason why sisters and brothers, we'll talk about this in the next class, that we have to aid one another in trying to what? Lower our gaze, taking advantage of all the avenues that Allah has made lawful, and utilizing that for our benefit to protect ourselves. We'll stop here, inshallah. Any questions about the lesson? So keep in mind, the ahkam of marriage is 5. Sometimes it could be what, everyone? Obligatory. Sometimes it could be what? Highly recommended. And sometimes, like I said, it could be what? Mubah. Mubah means something natural. Like you want to receive reward for it, you won't receive a sin for it. It's just natural. It's like sitting down. It's me sitting in this chair. This is mubah. Then you have where it's detested, and then you have, disliked, and then you have where it's what? It's haram. It's haram. And like I talked about earlier, brothers and sisters, don't forget about trying to now implement the advice of here in this land. Here in this land, you don't know who you're getting married to usually. You do not know. Usually the women who you marry or the brothers who you marry are appointed through a wakil. So a wakil has maybe 80 sisters. He doesn't know these women. Does he? He might have a general type of information about the sister religiously, and vice versa about brother. Same thing. Brother, sister might ask, "What about the brother I'm marrying? Do you know him?" He'd be like, "He comes to the masjid. He comes to the masjid. I see him. He seems like a good brother." Which lets you know what? My knowledge of him is limited. You understand, everyone? Based upon the fact that you don't know what you're getting, take your time. Get married. Don't rush into having babies. Do not rush into what? And even if you are, make your marriage fun. Get married. Go out and date after the marriage contract. I didn't say before. After the marriage contract. Make it fun. All right, we're married now. Let's go have some fun. Let's go out on a date somewhere. Let's laugh. Let's get to know each other on a more intellectual level to see if I like you mentally. Because men know once that intimacy is over, you start analyzing other things about it because or else you will lose interest. Right or wrong, every man knows that. Once that sex is over, you got to have other qualities about a man to keep him intrigued about you. Other than that, he's going to be ready to go out that door. That's the reality, sisters. That's how men function. So you have to have religion, manners, respect, because he's going to start analyzing you now. Is she a good woman? She okay? She's pretty okay, but we got past that part. Does she got manners? Is she religious? Is she a good woman? Comes from a good family? Smart and intelligent, so maybe if I have offspring by her, my children will also be intelligent. To the end of it, you start looking at other things. And if you don't have those answers and he's analyzing you, man, I wish this marriage would be over now. You understand? I'm just saying reality. This is how men's mental function. You have to have other qualities than just being enticing and pleasing physically. You have to have religion. You have to have uprightness. You have to have manners. You have all these other things that are what? Key elements to keeping that man pleased with you after the sex is over. And all the brothers in this room are agreeing with me. I know they say, you're absolutely right. Because men, if you do not have other qualities that intrigues that man after that sex is over, he will be ready to go out that door. Understand? But we'll stop here, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك